inflowed into all the ETFs. That's massive. And you can see how much correlation these inflows have with pushing up prices because they're largely being fueled by institutionals with huge capital.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. Joining me today is Brian from Santiment. And as you all know, we're going to go into the metrics and the data to see what Bitcoin and altcoins are doing and what may come next. Brian, great to see you.
Great to be here with you, Tony. Last time we chatted, it was kind of a more worrisome time. And all of a sudden, we're in celebration mode here as Bitcoin just went above 100K for the first time since February 3rd. So yeah, a lot of rejoicing happening.
Yeah. In fact, Bitcoin crossed $101,000 as well. And then ETH is back over 2,000. Seeing some momentum here. But of course, we want to validate this move with the data. Let's kick it off with Bitcoin. If you can share your screen and some of the metrics, and we can start diving into it.
Yeah, we'll jump right in here. One thing I want to look at right away is seeing if there's a divergence forming between the 10 to 10K BTC holders, which are essentially the key stakeholders that through our studies have the most correlation with where prices tend to go next. Not a perfect one, but a good one. So seeing how they're doing versus what prices are doing. And it kind of looks so-so. We've seen, a fair bit of accumulation going back to mid-March. And of course, the early April tariff announcement by Trump caused a little bit of a divot right here. That's, for those unfamiliar with this chart, we're just looking at the total amount of BTC held by all wallets that have between 10 to 10K BTC. They make up about 2/3 of the supply of this group, so massive amount. So they dump a little bit, but by the next day, they're already accumulating again. A little bit of flatness during the uncertainty of that first week of tariff policy announcements and, real versus fake news, all of that stuff. But they really began accumulating rapidly right around the bottom, around April 10th, April 11th. Actually, technically, April 9th was the bottom, and you can see they're already accumulating here. They get all the way up to about 13.5 million BTC combined before a little bit of dumping started. And they're actually down just slightly despite prices being up. So, if we draw just a line here for the amount held versus the price, you can see they're going in two different directions. So ideally, we need the accumulation for the key stakeholders to keep up and start looking a little more like that, or even, higher. You get the idea. That would justify for prices to go even higher, and potentially we see that new 110K Bitcoin all-time high that so many are waiting for right now.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And as I look at this chart, I see the peaks and valleys and ebbs and flows, on the micro for overall. Like, it doesn't go in a straight line. So to your point, Hopefully we see that uptick, even though overall this is still holding well. It's not like it's in a downtrend or anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah, they're certainly not dumping by any means, but we do want to see the key stakeholders continuing to get richer in Bitcoin over time as a justification for prices to move up, because they've got the capital to push up prices, and that gets retail to kind of help with the domino effect and add fuel to the rocket ship, if you will. So they tend to take the lead. And if they're not pushing prices up or accumulating more as prices are moving up, that can be a little worrisome. So, based on this chart alone, it could be a signal that we might be in a bit of a stagnant period now that we've reached, the summit of 100K plus again.
Oh, for sure. And then I can only imagine that some of these whales, not all obviously, but if they bought at 76K or 80K, right? And it just hit 90 something or 100, they take some profits off the table.
Exactly. Yeah. And we got to that level, here on April 7th. And during that time, they're still up quite a bit. They've accumulated a total of about a little over 45K Bitcoin during that stretch, which is, if I'm doing the math, about $45 million worth of BTC. So they're moving in the right direction. Or no, it might be 450 million, whatever it is. It's a ton of money, more than any one of us watching or speaking will ever see.
Yeah. Let's talk about sentiment. How are retail feeling? Are they starting to get a bit euphoric? Is the tariff worry kind of dissipating?
Yeah, so I plotted the top 3 non-stable coins here in terms of market cap, just so we can see how sentiment's kind of fluctuating between all 3. This red line here is Bitcoin. We do see that as of today, it is up, not surprising, but it is an extreme. So this is essentially measuring all the positive comments versus the negative comments and dividing them by one another based on our algo that looks at whether a comment is bullish or bearish. So when we get up here, a high amount, that tends to lead to a top. When it gets very low, I'll just hide the other 2 so it's a little easier to see. When we get very low, these are the kinds of indications that we might be in a bottom. We saw one here, and we saw prices rise shortly after. And then this was a really ideal time to buy the morning of May 7th, morning for the US folks at least. And that's when prices really started to churn, and we suddenly went from 93 to 100 in about 36 hours or so. So where we're at now with Bitcoin, it looks like there's a little bit of greed going on in terms of just overall sentiment, but it isn't to the level that I would be worried, FOMO is about to burn this rally to the ground.
Right. And it seems like we're setting up for, I know seasonality is not always perfect, but in the bull market years, the final years, you do have that Q2 run up. We saw it in 2021 where things cool down, and potentially a continuation into the end of the year of Q3, Q4. But, we don't have a crystal ball, but maybe it blows off. There's a blow off top at the end of Q2 in June. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to predict because we can have so many macroeconomic factors, tariff policies just throwing a huge cog into the wheel. Jerome Powell just decided to keep interest rates the same yesterday, and that was a very mild letdown. I think most people overwhelmingly expected that outcome. But yeah, in terms of timing, if we look ahead to the summer, there can be sentiment changes that can shift things for sure.
I saw that Bitcoin ETF inflows were spiking. Like BlackRock's IBIT has been giving me anything you can share there.
So you can see very clearly there have been tons of inflow days, a little over $3 billion, or no, I'm sorry, $5 billion since April 16th inflowed into all of the ETFs. That's massive. And you can see how much correlation these inflows have with pushing up prices because they're largely being fueled by institutionals with huge capital. So like you can see even a month before Trump was elected, massive inflows. This one had $1.35 billion the day after Trump was elected here. And we've just had a collective, day after day, something like $500 million per day since April 16th, roughly, if you take the averages. So that's been a huge contributor. There was a bit of a drop right before Jerome Powell made his decision in the FOMC yesterday because people were fearful, but now they're starting to do business as usual and push money back into it. And that helped push Bitcoin up higher to where we are now. So
and
go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just looking at November and that huge spike and how that correlated with the price running up.
Yeah, it was massive. These are more elongated data points, but here this is daily. But the point is, you can just see how much the inflows had an effect as people got excited about the pro-crypto presidential candidate being likely voted in and then officially being voted in right after. And it really didn't stop until we got a few inflows in late November here. So it's pretty impressive how, if there's an inflow day, prices generally go up. If there's an outflow day, prices generally go down. it's kind of a good reflection of what whales are doing on chain, just in a more detailed way through ETFs, because ETFs give much more transparent data, and give us an idea of like how these institutionals are choosing to put in money versus pull out money on any given day. So it's like there's a big spotlight on them.
Very interesting. This is why I love looking at the data, because you have these different data points and you can really use it to form a thesis and get a clear picture of what's happening in the market. Very, very interesting. Let's talk altcoins, and maybe we can start with Ethereum. Ethereum cracking 2K today, starting to show some life, and then you had the Petra update that took place this week as well.
Yeah, the Petra update definitely was underwhelming because, of course, Ethereum did not magically start to outperform the markets instantly like people were hoping back in the merge in September of 2022. And people's, especially retail's moods and emotions related to any upgrade in crypto largely depends on whether there's a positive price reaction. That's just the reality, because most are using these coins as investment vehicles, and they're not just tech enthusiasts that are excited about innovation. Many say they are, but it's all dependent on price for a lot of people and their sentiment. So it started a little bit down. You can see when it happened a couple days ago, actually had one of the most negative sentiment days for Ethereum of the year. But as prices started to rise after that upgrade completed, suddenly, sentiment has become a little more lukewarm here. It's not euphoric at all yet. So there's plenty of room to run from what I'm seeing. The point is, Ethereum's up something like 11, 12% today. I would expect that rally can continue until the greed starts to reach something like this or up here, where there's like 3-1 or 4-1 bullish versus bearish comments. So it looks pretty nice in that respect.
Good to see some life after it's been a tough bull market for ETH.
Yeah, it really has. It's interesting. I'm looking at XRP, by the way, and it's having a big euphoric day, even though I don't believe it's doing quite as amazing as Ethereum. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. We didn't look at prices yet, but let's see if we can quickly pull that up.
I know there was some news around Ripple. It could be around, some news announcement that's driving the sentiment.
Yeah, I saw something related to it. Let's see if it's showing up on our social trends, actually. So we go to trending coins. XRP isn't even in the top 10 at the moment. It's all about Bitcoin, Ethereum. Litecoin had a rally a few days back, so that's been in the news. But yeah, I'm not seeing anything too related to XRP. If I just plot the asset, yeah, the social volume isn't showing anything special. So for whatever reason, there is some bullishness toward XRP to a pretty extreme degree right now. So that's a bit of a warning sign, actually, for XRP enthusiasts. Just a short-term FOMO spike, but it could be enough to kind of halt any rallies going on.
Sure.
Another thing on Ethereum, by the way, I wanted to show. Check this out. So this is the mentions of lower prices. We're obviously a little above 2,000 right now, but it's the mentions of lower prices between 1,000 to 1,500 versus higher prices, 2,500 to 3,000. So a little bit below versus a little bit above where we're at now. When you see very low spikes like this, it tends to be a bottom signal. I'll zoom out a little bit more. And when you see really high spikes, it tends to be a bit of a top signal. So for example, even right here, this at least halted some of the bleeding. This was a great bottom signal. You see how these blue spikes here are just jolting way above red. So people are commenting on lower. And then right here, we're suddenly seeing a little bit of greed again and people speculating and daydreaming about just how high this Ethereum rally can go.
Interesting. It's so funny that we have this data and you could narrow it down to the price calls below or above. That's really cool.
It's fun. Yeah, we do it for Bitcoin a lot too. And it kind of looks pretty similar right now. It's just, people calling for 250K anytime we go on like a 5% Bitcoin rally. And anytime that really spikes, you tend to see a top because the FOMO is just getting a little too intense.
What about Solana? Anything interesting happening there?
In terms of Solana, if I change up the price, the social volume is pretty down. So we saw a big spike. Let me make this a little bigger. We saw a big spike here between April 15th and 20th, and this was a pretty huge rally. You can see when it's going way down or way up, that's when people want to talk about it. But it's been kind of unassuming and in the middle, even though it's rallying today. Everything is rallying today, so it's kind of under the radar still. But social dominance is actually way down. It's being talked about at some of the lowest levels we've seen since early April, if not the entire year. So it's not getting as much hype as you would think. I'm seeing that on Telegram, Reddit, especially X, very little discussion. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a bit of bot activity because X has been having a lot of trouble controlling the amount of, bots that just spam and shill various coins. You can see the outage here for a week on 4chan, but they've resumed.
Interesting.
Yeah, little minor spike on Farcaster, but yeah, it's just been pretty silent and not a lot of discussion related to Solana lately.
Yeah, it's funny, and there's like rotational liquidity that happens in the market, right? Some altcoins start leading, and then you have your laggards catch up, and like every dog has his day, so to speak. So like ETH right now may be stealing the show, then all of a sudden you'll see ETH cool down, then Solana will pop off, and so on and so forth.
They take turns. That's the name of the game. If you can be ahead of the cycle and understand where the profit redistributions are going, especially between like the top caps, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Solana, Chainlink, a lot of these, even Binance Coin, a lot of these assets, they're just taking turns going on little mini pumps. And, the higher up on these pump and dump group chains you are, the more in the know you'll be on which one is going to jump up next. So, today it's been Ethereum. Tomorrow it could be Solana. And Santiment can really help you shortcut your way to understanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I pulled up Memecoins here too, Tony, just to see what's going on. And obviously many of these are related to Solana. They've been on a huge tear, obviously. Many of them are on a big run as we speak.
Wow.
Mod coin, especially Purple Pepe. This is the first I've even heard of it, but there's always different Pepe variations.
Oh my God, the stuff they come up with, man. I was hoping these meme coins we wouldn't see, except for maybe Doge, we wouldn't see much from, some of these Solana based meme coins, but I guess it's a sign of euphoria returning a bit.
Right. Yeah. It's party time right now for a lot of traders because they take their 101K Bitcoin value and they say, wow, look at all these meme coins I can now buy that are pumping way more than Bitcoin. I'm going to jump in on that. And generally, if that gets too intense, we see a bit of a collapse in the markets. So, even though prices are pumping right now, we don't want it to get out of hand because that's usually the last stage of a bullish cycle. Just like we saw in mid-January, right before Trump was inaugurated, we saw similar signs where meme coins were going nuts.
I hope they don't steal the liquidity or the show like we saw, in the last bullish rally. And hopefully some of these, major L1s like ETH and Solana, XRP and so forth can really be the ones that are leading the market and not so much the meme coins.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm checking. I would assume that most of the volume is going into Bitcoin right now, but this is a fun way to look at the top 6 market caps of meme coins in pink, top 6 AI and big data in yellow, top 6 layer 1s, which obviously is led by Bitcoin in green, and top 6 layer 2s in purple. I'll just take layer 2s off to make it simpler. And we'll just look at layer 1s versus meme coins for a minute. If we look at the last couple weeks or so, Yeah, we saw some crazy volume here for layer ones, which were likely related to Bitcoin on the 7th. And that was right before we took off. Yeah, right here. This was like the blast off indication. But look at meme coins now. They're at their highest point in a couple of weeks by a large margin. Their volume just blasted off in the last day and a half. So a little bit of a worry because you talked about how it might be stealing some of the spotlight. And that's kind of exactly what's happening. At least we can say, layer ones are also going up a little, just not to the extreme of meme coins.
Oh, Brian, I don't like to see this, even though I believe in the free market. I don't want to ban meme coins. I do. They need to be regulated a bit, right? But I hate that.
I mean, it's a double-edged sword. These meme coins bring in more people for the fun and the gamble aspect of their existence, and they can eventually get into projects that are actually innovating and developing.
True.
But crypto just has so many weird entry points for people. Some come in for NFTs, for meme coins, for the tech, even though I think those are the minority. But whatever the case is, that's the whole point of crypto. It's a decentralized area that's anti-establishment and lets people invest however they wish to invest. And this is just kind of a reflection of traders' emotions, really.
Yeah, the meme coins feel like last cycle's NFTs, right? That was the big thing that brought in people across the board. I mean, 13-year-olds and whoever, right? And kept getting in, and it feels like meme coins are doing the same thing this cycle.
Absolutely. And we had a DeFi and staking period in the early 2020s, kind of when COVID was hitting. Before that, I remember Dogecoin back in like 2017 and 18 really starting to make a name for itself. So we kind of are seeing history repeat itself now. Anytime we get on a bull cycle like this, it's like the jokes and the fun elements of crypto really start to break out until something stops the fun from happening.
Yeah. Brian, great stuff, man. And last time we said, look, hopefully next time we meet, Bitcoin is coming out of the hole, and we're there. But maybe the next time we meet, Bitcoin is approaching a new all-time high. I don't know, 115, 120K.
Yeah, it could very well happen. We just have to see, let's see if there's a little bit of a stagnant period. I'm actually kind of hoping that happens because that would lead a lot of the retail traders to profit take and just be happy with 100K. And if they start to sell their coins to these big whales, the whales will be the ones that will pump us up to, that coveted 110K and above.
Oh, absolutely. Good stuff, man. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks, Tony. Talk soon.